List is David Benshabat, the managing director of this research institute in which we are sitting at the moment. He's an independent philosopher of language and a dedicated interdisciplinary scholar. And his research focuses on the evolution and social theological implications of the Hebrew language cosmology. So David.
Everybody familiar with Faulty's, John Cleese, Faulty's Hotel? That's how I feel right now. Now play with the sound, and now I have to say something intelligent. Okay, so I'll try. We did not coordinate one more word with who will talk before me and about what. And you know, thanks to the painstaking work of people like Noam Mizrahi, people like me can speculate freely.
You are sure speculating.
So today I'm going to explore and demonstrate a phenomenon unique to Semitic languages and to Hebrew language in particular. A careful research of which can tell us a lot about ourselves. A targeted use of the phenomenon can even contribute to solving open questions in the region study, like the one related to the Dead Sea Scrolls and the polemic around the identity of the authors. I will begin with an elementary demonstration of the phenomenon for our guests who are not speaking, not fluent in Hebrew, and also for our friends and colleagues who are fluent in Hebrew as well. Let's take a sequence of some frequently used words in English, but for a change, we run them in Google Images search engine, which is not so bad empirical statistical examination that offers the most popular visual connected to applied search. Visual connected to applied consonant search. If we examine the graphic imagery of those words in Google Image Engine, we'll get this. So, we're searching for moral. This is the most popular image. We're searching for tradition. We'll get this. By the way, in Hebrew, it's another similar picture of family with doing kiddush, devotion, delivery, SMS. There appears to be no ear-catching phonetic resemblance, no visual similarity. Again, the visual does not raise semantic affinity between the words. Now we will translate the same sequence of words we searched earlier directly to Hebrew. So moral is musar, tradition is masoret, devotion mesirut, delivery mesira, SMS misron, new word. I think 5 years. Visually speaking, the image research shows close resemblance with minor alterations, but the phonetic similarity immediately becomes apparent, even more so heard as we see something else. A repeated sequence of consonants, meser, MSR, implanted deep within the heart of each of those words, in effect, creating an interpretive context. Either be known to the user, or is more often the case, is not. When searching Google Images for this core sequence, only this core sequence, MSR, in Hebrew, these two words are first results. Somebody is trying to transfer idea for somebody's ear, and this message in the bottle. So, what can we say so far from comparative observation of this phenomenon? A set of different signifiers that separately do not relate to the same signified. The signifier becomes a group because of a similar sequence appearing in all of them, causing phonetic resemblance. If we use an allegory from the most common information system in nature, the genome, one can claim that the sequence encoded in the semantic field in the same way of our DNA is encoding amino acid. If you know, there are many biologists here, 4 bases, 3 of them in certain order, create certain amino acid. In the DNA, the fixed sequence of 3 bases in a certain order encodes a certain amino acid. If that sequence is altered, the amino acid changes, except few amino acids that have few coded encoding for them. This resemblance to DNA also includes the functionality of being a lighter, efficient information transferring system. Lighter, efficient information transferring system. I'm talking about the Hebrew language. What I'm meaning by lighter, you know, we have traditional Chinese or ancient Egyptian with thousands of pictograms that it's not lighter, it's heavy language. The sequence messer functions as a sort of metadata file for the entire group of words. Thus, a semantic commune, a field of meaning is created in which different words are floating and speaker identified in a way they are connected. We're all familiar with hashtag. Actually, the messer, this sequence of MSR in this set of, in this semantic commune, is actually functioning as a hashtag. I know one word with this sequence, it takes me to the whole group, to the whole semantic commune. Perhaps, so this is semantic commune. Actually, I have to know one word, and then when I hear another word, I know they are connected. The shared sequence created semantic commune. Perhaps a burning of a neural network in our brain occurs in the same manner. This means that a time traveler from the Dead Sea of 2,000 years ago could hear the modern word SMS, or in Hebrew, misron, if we remember this word, misron, and realize it must have something to do with the delivery of small message, although he never saw a smartphone before in his life. He will come here, he will hear misron, he will know it's something, it's small message. Why small? Because the two final consonants and the vowel consonants are related to something small. We have kid, yeled, child is yaldon. So, step forward. The bigger the semantic commune is, the greater the amount of words in that meaning field carrying the same sequence, the better our relative understanding of each of the words in the commune. This phenomenon greatly undermines the hermeneutic barrier, i.e., what did the ancient speaker really mean with certain expression in that time? And if confronting Jacques Derrida, the Jewish Jacques Derrida, this phenomenon significantly reduces his famous difference, the interpretive inherent dilemma. Now, we'll observe another quality of this phenomenon by demonstrating a different sequence of semantic commune. Once again, we turn to our friend Google with these words: trash, statue, disqualified, chisel. You see, now after this first example, it's easy. Psolet, pesel, pasul, mifseret. Here, among the conclusion of the last example, we find an additional beauty: assimilation of a theological value using the other words in the semantic commune and the phonetic resemblance. As is well known, the first monotheist warrior against idolatry, Abraham, is absent in archaeology. We have no archaeology for Abraham. But here, we see a testimony within the language to that very notion, manifested in the second commandment. Second commandment: you shall not make a statue or image. The word statue, pesel, and disqualified are linked phonetically. We can learn more when we observe the time in which signifiers join the semantic commune. The word trash, solet, and the word, and disqualified, pasul, are linked phonetically. And disqualified joined the commune only during the Hellenistic occupation of the region around 180 BC, and are quite common in the Mishnah and Talmud era. This phonetic resemblance gave birth only when the Hellenistic era around 180 BC. This means we get an additional multifunctional tool. We have a tool for elegant assimilation of moral values, a tool for analyzing a zeitgeist of a given era. When we trace when was the first time that a certain sequence entered the language, we learn a lot by comparing to the other friends in the commune that was not from the same time. A tool for comparative archaeological dating of textual finding in Hebrew. So with this assumption and this set of tools, we will try and dare confront the polemic in the research of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So, as said before, we did not coordinate with Noah, and he gave the best introduction I could dream of. As no researchers are conflicted over the question of the scroll authors. Were they a separatist, marginal sect of what is called Essenes, that sustained extraordinary literacy alongside extremist concept of the end of the days, purity and apocalyptic war? Or perhaps the scroll authors were none other than the sons of Tzadok, a family of priests, Kohens, descended from Tzadok, the first high priest in Solomon's temple. This method proceeds to claim that the priest of House Tzadok took off to the desert with the library of the Second Temple during the appearance of the Hellenistic rule in the area during the second century BC. In that library, which is in fact the collection of scrolls found in the clay vases in Qumran, to the north of the Dead Sea, lived together both familiar texts, we know as the Old Testament, and additional theological texts cut out and politically ignored with the creation of the rabbinical Judaism after the destruction of the Second Temple. This question is a loaded one indeed, heavily loaded even, and fundamental towards everything we know about the time of the creation of Judaism and Christianity as well. The circumstances that brought to the ideological separation. The transition from a prolonged period of central worship and animal sacrifice in one place, at the hand of the privileged few, to a time of literacy, scholarship for every individual, and much, much more. Let's open our toolbox again. This time we will take the sequence demand, preacher, required, and school. We shall skip Google image this time, as the idea is clear, and proceed straight to Hebrew translation of the sequence Darash, as we see. To the Hebrew speakers, I translated school to Midrash, since school is a new word in Hebrew. The Midrash was most of the Jewish time and Hebrew time was the word for school. This is what Google Images present for the sequence Drash. This is the top search to this sequence Drash. Now the expression lidrosh, appears in tens of occurrences in the Bible, all of which in the sense of demanding something that is lacking, or demanding answer from God. Moses turned to God with, Ki yavo elai ha'am lidrosh Elohim. They will come to me, demand God. The word midrash, on the other hand, is one of the classic signifier of the transition from Judaism with central priestly worship toward Judaism that privatized the holiness into the language. Again, a Judaism that privatized the holiness into the language. From hierarchical society towards the enlightened Judaism, where communal learning is the sacred way to demand God. Communal learning, instead of ritual of animal sacrifice. Well, the word midrash in that sense appears 15 times in the Mishnah, and hundreds of times more and more in the Talmud and the superseding theological literature. But if we go further back, 200 years, to the approximate time of writing of the first Dead Sea Scroll to be discovered, the community rule, it is very surprising to see how often Drash, D-R-S-H, appears in the sense of communal learning and discussion of the Holy Scripts. Even one occurrence of the word midrash in the sense we only saw 200 years later. No more lidrosh God, but rather midrash Torah. No more demand God, but rather demand text. And then you see this word, midrash Torah, in the communal rule, page 5, a bit bigger. Midrash HaTorah. And then an interesting light is shed on to the understanding of the great polemic in scrolls research I have mentioned earlier. That perhaps the group residing in the north of the Dead Sea and wrote these words that we can easily read today with no dictionary and with the help of scholars like Noam Mizrahi, perhaps planted the seeds of the Pharisees, the Prushim, Pharisees, revolution itself. Perhaps they planted the seeds of the Pharisees' revolution itself. Perhaps the rabbinical Judaism started in the Dead Sea after all. The revolution that renounced worship of animal sacrifice in the temple, and there are plenty of images like this, and privatized the holiness into the language with the claim, holiness for all. The revolution that neutralized the privileged status of the one priestly lineage, Aharon and his sons, and goes by generations, and in fact gradually created an equal, enlightened group in which one's social status doesn't matter, but rather one's dedication in studying Midrash, and specifically demanding enlightenment. So, finally, and in more daring words, one might claim that after 1,000 years in which the ruling mindset was that of Aharon, the high priest, here in the Dead Sea, the language cosmology and social consciousness of Moses had returned to its former greatness. Thank you. One more word for this, for the tanks. I just remember about the word tanks, Todah in Hebrew, didn't indicate tanks in the temple time, but just the name of another popular sacrifice, Korban Todah.
Thank you, David or David. A question or two? Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for these two interesting talks. I'm not a scholar in ancient Hebrew, but I recently was collaborating with Ethiopian hospital, and I started learning a few words of Amharic, and I realized that Amharic is the second most spoken Semitic language in the world. Amharic. And what I saw there is there are very old roots to Christianity, there are very old roots to Jewish Ethiopian people, and somehow in this triangle of the old languages and the old scripts, I always hear of Jewish, Christian, and whatever, but the Amharic branch is somehow lost in the discussion. Now, looking at the script itself, as I have learned in the past, is that the Proto-Sinaitic script south in the Sinai was somewhere at the triangle of the people's travel across the continents. Is there some research looking into that triangle of Amharic, Hebrew?
So certainly, would like to say a word about research being conducted at Tel Aviv University by scholars of Semitic languages, both Amharic and Aramaic.
So I would like to just
Stand up, stand up.
Yeah, so let's distinguish between language and script. Many languages can be written in different scripts, and different scripts in certain different languages. For the Ethiopian branch of Semitic linguistics, actually, in Tel Aviv University, I believe, I hope I'm not wrong, that we have the only faculty member doing full-time Ethiopian linguistics in Israel, and it's also very rare abroad. My colleague Benshabat, Department of Hebrew Language and Semitic Linguistics, I would say the Amharic language is the sub-branch of the Ethiopic family of languages, which is itself Semitic. It's related, genetically speaking, to Hebrew as well, to Arabic and other languages. There is a study of that, but not as intense perhaps as it should be. However, there is an important center of study of Amharic language and culture in Addis Ababa, in Ethiopia itself. Western scholars are a bit less involved with that, but there are some scholars doing it.
Okay, one last question before
By the way, in Arabic, the word for school is madrasa, the same consonants.
Okay, over there. Yeah. Yep.
What
Okay, fine. Okay, so yeah, one last question.
Okay, I'm going to be a little bit of a gadfly again, as I was with Noam. I think that a lot of the conclusions that you reached are based on biblical criticism, which is very problematic. When you say that at the time of the Essenes, there was a switch from the priests as a privileged class and being the ones who had the religion to others is problematic because you see as early as the prophets, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was Hosea that said, Uneshalma parim svatenu, and we shall pay back for the animals the service of our lips, which was before the destruction of the first temple. So in other words, when the temple is no longer available, then you don't have animal sacrifices anymore, but then it's replaced by prayer. And so that existed long before the time that you say there was a transition. Another thing is that before that time, it's recorded in the Talmud in Sanhedrin that Shimon ben Shetach instituted the system of schools for everybody, so that the system of schools was already before the time that you identify as the main use of the word midrash. So I have a number of questions on your sources.
I will try to relate. All the ideas existed way before, even in Psalms. And Unshalma parim svatenu is one. It's a core understanding of what I just said. The substitute for the parim will be our language, but the point here is the time of the manifestation. That's the point. That we are not talking about the ideas. The Deuteronomy and the Hosea, of course, and the Psalms said it all. But the time was right when the Greek conqueror came to Jerusalem and did what he did with the temple, and that was the ground to this revolution to grow. All the ideas were existed. Shimon ben Shetach was first, after Yoshua ben Gamla, with his law that every parent should teach his son to read and write. It's very revolutionary step. So, but it's all a matter of what was the good time for these old ideas to manifest.
Okay, I'm afraid that we will have to end here. I would like to thank you all for taking